What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we have some Destiny 2 news, and this comes in the form of This Week at Bungie. Of course, the very final update they would get from Bungie before the launch of a new season, and so, in this one, they give us a preview of the new Strand aspects that we'll be getting as part of Season of the Deep. And we actually get a little bit of gameplay of each of them, which is cool. But on top of that, we get a preview of the new artifact for the season, so the artifact mods, and updates to enemy shields. Plus Bungie have some launch notes for the new season, and there are a couple of other things that we'll speak about in the video. So, as always guys, I hope you enjoy this one, but without further delay, let's get into it. And firstly, in the TWAB today, they do a roundup of all of the info that they've given us about Season of the Deep, and that includes ability tuning, weapon sandbox tuning, economy updates, and a bunch of other changes. Most of those we have spoken about previously, so we won't go over all of them today, but they do give us some video previews of the new aspects for Strand. So initially right here, we get some gameplay of the Hunter's Threaded Spectre, and we can activate the class ability to leave behind a decoy woven from strand matter that draws the attention of nearby enemies, and after taking significant damage, or when combatants approach, the decoy detonates, which deals damage and unleashes threadlings that seek out and attack nearby foes. And of course we can see that in the gameplay right here, certainly looks like a pretty cool one. Then they show off the Titan's Fletched Storm, and while sliding we can activate the charged melee ability to leap into the air, which knocks nearby targets away and deals damage. But then while airborne we can activate the charged melee again to launch a cluster of damaging, unraveling projectiles. And repeatedly activating the melee will chain additional throws. So we spot that one in action there as well. But finally there is the Wanderer for Warlocks, and tangles we throw attach to enemies and detonate into a suspending burst, then threadling final blows will create a tangle. So cool to get a better look at those right there, and give us your thoughts on them down below, as well as which ones you're most excited to try out. Up next though, Bungie give us a preview of the new artifact, and they say this is called the NPA Repulsor Regulator, which is certainly an interesting name. And in terms of the mods in each of the columns, for column 1, there is Anti-Barrier Auto Rifle, as well as Unstoppable Hand Cannon, Overload Scout Rifle, then we're going to get Overload Trace Rifle and Unstoppable Glaive. So give us your thoughts on that weapon selection. And for column 2, we get authorized mods Arc, and the armor energy costs of all armor mods affecting your Arc weapons are significantly discounted. And of course the description is the same for each of the elements, so there is authorized Void, authorized Strand, and then authorized Melee. And finally, Technicolor Siphon, which grants access to helmet armor mods that combine the effects of the Strand Siphon and Arc Siphon mods. For column 3 though, we'll see improved Unraveling, which increases the amount of damage dealt by unraveling a target. There's also Deeper Origins, which greatly improves the benefit provided by the Unsated Hunger, Nanotech Tracer Rockets, Harmonic Resonance, and Noble Deeds traits. Plus there's Unto the Breach, and defeating a Void debuffed target creates a Void Breach while your Void subclass is equipped. And Electric Armor, which allows us to stay amplified longer while the Arc subclass is equipped. Then Thunderous Retort, which grants bonus Arc super damage if cast while critically wounded or while amplified, which lasts until the end of the super activation. Column 4 though, we'll see Strand Soldier, and the Strand weapons gain unraveling rounds whenever you gain Woven Mail, while your Strand subclass is equipped. And there is Overcharged Armory, and weapons with Unsated Hunger, Nanotech Tracer Rockets, Harmonic Resonance, and Noble Deed traits are always overcharged weapons for you when that modifier is active. But there's also Protective Breach, and picking up a Void Breach gives you an Overshield or refreshes your existing Overshield. And Countercharge, which gains a stack of armor charge when you stun a champion. Then Amped Up, where we get damage resistance while amplified. And for the final column, we get Conductive Cosmic Needle, and targets affected by Strand debuffs take increased damage from Arc and Void abilities. There's also Shock and Awe, and Arc final blows while you're amplified summon a burst of lightning that damages and jolts targets. Plus there's Supernova, and picking up a Void Breach causes your next source of Void damage to create a large weakening pulse. As well as Squad Goals, and performing a finisher while you're amplified grants amplified to nearby allies when your Arc subclass is equipped. But it also affects Woven Mail, and finishers will grant Woven Mail to nearby allies, as well as an option for Devour right there for Void subclasses, so that's a pretty interesting one. But very finally there is Lightning Strikes twice, and after throwing an Arc Grenade, we get increased grenade recharge for a short time, and Arc Final Blows extend the duration of the benefit. So there are a couple of returning mods right there, but a few interesting new ones as well, and give us your thoughts about them down in the comment section. There's also a section where Bungie talk about updating combatant shields, And with the launch of Season of the Deep, they say they're introducing a change to most combatant shields that'll update their visuals across the entire game. And they show the Void Shield that we currently see on Minotaurs right here, and that's followed by a preview of what it will look like in Season of the Deep. So certainly an interesting change right there, and of course, it will affect all different enemy types. And they do say this isn't really a gameplay change, but is more of a visual thing. So let us know what you think about that. But they also talk about stability with various updates in the game, and they say they have a team focused on making corrections to new services so that they can safely perform background updates again, but they want to make the experience as predictable as possible when they drop new updates. So starting with Season of the Deep, they're moving to a scheduled downtime model where we bring Destiny 2 offline for an expected 1.5 hours on all update days. And they say this will allow them to do their staging and rollout on the same day and should make the experience more stable and reliable. So they're generally setting a new kind of universal standard for what to expect when there is an update to the game. I'm sure there'll be some variation on that at certain points in the future, but generally the goal here is to make the game more stable, especially when coming back online after a major update. So hopefully that'll turn out to be a positive. And for the update schedule for Season of the Deep next week, they say update 7.10 will be released on Tuesday, May 23rd, so at 7 AM maintenance is scheduled to begin, with the game going offline at 8:15 AM, and then at 10 AM, D2 will be brought back online, and the update will be playable on all platforms and regions. So that will be a little over an hour and 30 minutes of downtime before the update drops for Season of the Deep, and hopefully we'll get a pretty smooth launch. So that does it for the bulk of the TWAB stuff for today. As always though, I will link the full article down below. In addition to the news today though, Bungie this week have announced a bunch of changes coming for weapons in Season 21. And that includes both general quality of life, specific archetype weapon tuning, and adjustments to exotics. So firstly, there are changes coming for reticles, and they say, we've rebuilt the reticles for the following weapon types so that they move more visibly at high FOV, while still conveying the current state of the weapon accurately. So that includes fusion rifles, hand cannons, sidearms, and trace rifles. And they add that they plan to update other weapon reticles in a similar way in a future release. And on top of that, shotgun reticles also now scale with FOV, such that the reticle will closely match the pellet spread regardless of the selected FOV. So whatever field of view we're running in the game, those weapons should now be better represented. Additionally though, for reticles, they've updated charge meters for some weapons, so fusion rifles now have a charge meter under the reticle, and for swords, they say reticles will now show the current sword guard energy. But on top of that, there are some specific additions to exotic weapons, so they say the charge meter has been added to exotic weapons whose base weapon type doesn't typically have a charge meter, and that includes Devil's Ruin, Salvation's Grip, and Grand Overture. But on top of that, perk counter shows pips for perked shots on Quicksilver Storm, so that is the grenade count, then Ace of Spades Momentum Mori shot count, Lumina's Noble Rounds shot count, and the Traveler's Chosen Gathering Light stacks. Plus they've added a perk progress meter to the Manticore, and an element that shows the active perk for exotic weapons such as Hawkmoon, Aegis Scepter, Taraba, Touch of Malice, the Cryesthesia, and Trinity Ghoul. But finally, they've also added a charge meter and perk counter to the Vex Mythoclast. So some good quality of life updates to those specific weapons there. And then there are updates to the weapon inspection screen that allow us to rotate weapons around the same way we would with a Sparrow or piece of armor, and they added support for ambient VFX to play for weapons that have them. So that will give a better visual representation of weapon models and things like that. But then Bungie have outlined specific archetype changes, and so for bows, they say Tyranny of Heaven's stats were always weirdly low, so those have been updated. Plus for submachine guns, they say aggressive SMGs have surged in popularity for PvP, and they want to keep them viable, but they have reduced the base damage from 15 to 14, and they've increased the precision hit multiplier from 1.45 to 1.5. So crit damage will go from 21.8 to 21. Then for the Immortal specifically, they've reduced the base range value by 10 points. But on top of that, for sniper rifles, they say they were a very safe option. But for PvE, they're increasing damage by 10%, with the exception of Izanagi's Burden's honed edge shots, which don't receive the buff. Although they add that all other exotic sniper rifles will receive the buff. Then for scout rifles, they say the long arm was inadvertently receiving a damage bonus versus minors for exotics, so that has been addressed and that damage bonus essentially has been taken away. And moving on, they get on to exotic weapon changes. So they're improving the ammo economy for Eyes of Tomorrow, and killing 4 targets with a missile volley will refund 1 ammo. And for Graviton Lance, They say they feel that Revision Zero's heavy rounds 2 burst would be a good fit, so they've increased RPM from 257 to 300, and they've rebalanced the damage per shot, so they've increased the first shot damage for the body from 9.5 to 19, and the crit damage goes from 15.7 to 31.4. On top of that though, they've decreased the second shot damage, so from the body shots it goes from 35.6 to 25.6, and for crits it goes from 58.7 to 42.3. So it's going to be interesting to try Graviton Lance out. Then for Jade Rabbit, they say they've added buff text to show when the Fate of All Fools increased body shot damage is active, and quickly hitting 3 crits will now refund 3 shots instead of 1. So that's a pretty good change there. And Manticore gets a bit of a buff as well, and they've increased the Catalyst's damage resistance from tier 3 to tier 4. They've also increased movement speed during hang time, and they say activating the Catalyst perk will now partially refill the magazine. Then for Lumina, they've increased the Noble Rounds cap from 5 to 6, and with Heart Shadow they say the damage increase now activates quicker while invisible, and that'll be after 0.25 seconds instead of 1 full second. Plus they say it now weakens upon dealing any damage while the damage increase is active. Then here for Worldline Zero, they say the sprinting heavy attack can now be chained into itself once, and the Sword Guard energy cost from each sprinting heavy attack was reduced from 100% to 50%, plus they say they've increased the damage from an individual sprinting heavy attack by 8.3%. So that's a positive adjustment there, and for Sweet Business, it now fires explosive rounds every 20 shots. They add that it will be fewer shots when fully spun up, which is interesting. But also Legend of Aquarius gets a buff here, and they've increased the total ammo from 12 to 16, and increased the maximum projectile distance from 9 meters to 12 meters, so more ammo and slightly more range on the thing will certainly make it even better. On top of that, they have updated the catalyst for Tommy's matchbook, so while overheated, sustained fire scorches your target, and every 5 shots applies 14 plus 7 with Ember of Ashes equipped. So that could be a pretty good one scorching targets there. And there's an update to No Time to Explain for it to interact with barrier champions, so they say they've updated the drone to work with anti-barrier, and it will break barrier champion shields and over-penetrate combatant shields. Plus the drone will benefit from Feeding Frenzy from the No Time to Explain catalyst, and they say this also resolved an issue where feedback for Feeding Frenzy would always play when the player spawned and then never again. But on top of that, Skyburner's Oath gets an increase to Scorch stacks from 3 to 5 and 5 to 10 with Ember of Ashes equipped. And next for Salvation's Grip, they say it's been reworked to have 2 firing modes, so the charged shot creates a pattern of stasis crystals, and the uncharged shot is a normal grenade launcher shot, which does more damage to stasis crystals and frozen targets, but they also added a new perk that reloads the magazine from reserves when you quickly shatter at least 3 crystals with an uncharged shot. So that could be a good one to try out. Of course, Salvation's Grip definitely needed a bit of help. But they also updated Bad Juju's recoil, and they say it will now be more similar to other pulse rifles, where it was previously acting more like an auto rifle. Plus with Fighting Lion, they fixed an issue that was causing the weapon to do more damage than intended to red bar combatants. That may have been knocked down a couple of pegs there. And for Thunderlord, they say they resolved an issue, resulting in hits against the Divinity Bubble counting as 2 crits instead of 1. And that probably partially explains why the Thunderlord was so strong. But also, they say for Winterbite, they've managed to fix the exploitable damage bug, so the impact damage has been removed and redistributed to the detonation damage. And they say the self-damage scaling has been tuned to account for the increased damage of the detonation. So if Bungie are lucky right there, Winterbite will no longer be doing buggy amounts of damage. But finally for perks, there are a few changes here. So for Fragile Focus, they say the bonus lasts until shield pop and then returns when shield regenerates to 100%. But on top of that, Thresh, Demolitionist and Pugilist will now grant increased energy to glaive projectiles. So that's a positive, and for Reconstruction, they say it's been simplified under the hood so that they can place the perk on more weapons without exceeding perk budgets. And it results in a slight change to the timing of the perk, where the initial timer and the cooldown timer between reloads have been unified. So the base perk is 4 seconds, and the enhanced perk 3.5 seconds. Then of course, as I've outlined previously, Shoot to Loot has been updated to pick up Orbs of Power, and they say currently this works only on direct hits, but the ability for orbs to be picked up with weapon detonations will be added in a future patch. So a bunch of extra changes right there for weapons coming in Season 21, and of course that joins all of the adjustments to exotic armor. the ability tuning, quality of life, and other general updates to the game, which certainly overall places Season 21 as a pretty change-heavy season as far as seasons go. So give us your thoughts on all of those down below. But for today, guys, that's everything we have to speak about. So quite a lot of exciting stuff going on at the moment. And of course, I'll be keeping you posted with the new content next week. So be sure to get subscribed here on the channel. And if you've enjoyed the video today, a rating below really does help us out. But otherwise, as always, I very much appreciate you guys tuning in, and whatever you get up to, I hope you have an awesome day.